Hey guys, Chris Haddon, Jason Balin here with the Private Lenders Podcast. Another edition, some stuff going on. Just want to say real quick that for the first time in a little while, we have revamped our consulting, our teaching everyone our hard money system. That for a long time, for the past few years, we've been doing it in our office. We've reworked it, made it all virtual, doing it online using Zoom calls and other stuff that we give to you, other teaching tools and materials and presentation stuff that we use in our business every day. So just wanted to let you know that that is live again for the first time in a while at hardmoneybusiness.com. Okay, so an important part of our system, I mean, every aspect of it is important, it has its role. But one thing that we're working on with the team today, we wanted to share with you guys, is the importance of scripting. So this is what we call scripting secrets to close more and close better deals. That's this segment of the HMB system. So here's what we, it could be looked at as a pretty simple thing the way you talk, especially if you've been in any kind of like sales or loan origination or real estate or whatever. But a friend of mine said to me recently, and this really applies to this, is that this business takes a month to learn and a lifetime to perfect, right? So these little tweaks, these little, tips and tricks and strategies have a big effect, right? And what we see sometimes with people both within our company and with other companies is that they skew too far to one way or the other. They're either too soft and apologetic and all customer service oriented, or they're just a jerk on the other side, kind of like the previous generation of hard money lenders who were of the opinion that I have the money, I make the rules and you just have to do whatever I say, and they treat their borrowers like a peon, and that's not the way it should be. And we're going to get into some more specific ways on how to frame the relationship and the conversation to close more deals and have better relationships, frankly.
Yeah, and I think the challenge comes from based on where you worked previously, where you worked, what your occupation was, what your background was previously. And I'll give you an example. Like I remember kind of when we started, there was more people that were less customer service, less salesy, and more, I have the money, I make the rules. Commercial banking oriented, and that just doesn't go that far. Nobody wants to kiss your butt in order to have you lend money when, just like everything else, there's lots of capital sources available to the right borrowers. So, we never kind of were on that train. On the other side, you never want to be, an order taker for your client, for your borrower either, right? As soon as you let them have the upper hand, you're screwed. You got to continue to keep frame control. And we've got some tips and tricks, that we discussed to go through this. So, but it's interesting because most people are either like fast and loose, cut and dry, this is what it is, take it or leave it, or the other side, which is like, sure, let me see what I can do. I'll try to help you out. Sorry, this didn't work. Things like that. And you got to play both hats and both roles. Like keep in mind, in general, you're playing a lot of on the front end 2 roles because number one, you got to be salesy in order to generate business. And on the other side, you got to be conservative to make sure you're assessing risk and put your underwriting hat on. So you got to play that. And if you look at it like that, that actually is an easy tip and trick to help. So you want to be salesy, you want to be friendly, you want to be outgoing, but on the other side, you want to be stern and you want to make sure, hey, listen, I've got the capital. Like, don't get me wrong. Like you would like to say, hey, I got the capital, I make the rules, but you can't say it like that. And if you do, you're a jerk. But at the same time, make it clear. You have something that they want. And yes, they have something you want as well because you want to make 13% and 3-point. It's on, from a good borrower and a good deal, but you got to frame it the right way so it's a win-win and it's a relationship for both sides.
For sure, I think it's helpful to put a number value on it. So if 100 is a guy's just a total jerk and you have to do what I say, and a 0 is a total pushover, then we want to be around a 60 and have the client be a 40. And I'll tell you why, because the reality of it is your money that you're lending, you and your investors, and you do make the decisions on the underwriting and the pricing and everything else. You are making these decisions. That is the relationship and how this transaction works. Now, you don't want to make anyone feel bad, but like they need to respect you. They need to respect your underwriting, decision-making, your judgment about the deal in general. They need to respect the fact that they have to make payments and do their job, and that there's consequences if they don't. Like, they need to respect you all around. But at the same time, like, you need to be appreciative and respectful of them as your client too, and as a professional real estate investor. And that's the way to have the best relationship. If it's too skewed one way or the other, it's not going to be optimal. It's not going to be optimal. But like, I definitely, and some of the stuff came up recently, and I want to caution, like, you don't need to kiss their asses. Like, you don't need to apologize. There isn't really any situation where you need to apologize at all, unless like maybe you really dropped the ball on something, like, I don't know, they needed something important and you missed their call. Like, I don't know. But for the most part, that's going to be rare. You don't need to apologize for your pricing. You don't need to apologize for your loan amount. You don't need to apologize for their cash to close. You don't need to apologize for how much you're giving them for this draw. You don't need to apologize, right? And like Jason was saying before, depending on people's backgrounds, they might come in with this like, I'm sorry, it's this, or, you know, this kind of woe is me approach to their client. And then a sharp real estate investor, they're just going to walk all over you. They're just going to beat you up for pricing and other things, and they're just going to be full of complaints. And that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, and that's typical for maybe a next mortgage broker or mortgage banker or someone like that who's kind of been in that space, or just a broker in general who's just, you know, kind of taking orders. And you got to have confidence. You know, you need to have confidence that, hey, I'm telling you, I'm going to lend you $200,000. I have the money available. I'm going to get that to you. I'm going to do your draws quickly. And what I tell you is going to go, right? And it's a mutual respect. And, you know, in general, you know, let's say it depends on, and here's another thing, like depending on male or female, how old you are, things like that. You know, sometimes you might be lending to somebody who's a little bit older and be like, you know, why am I borrowing money from somebody younger than me? I'm going to take advantage of them, blah, 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 blah. So you just got to be strong about that. So let's go through a little bit kind of how you set it up and how you do the script to begin with, because I think that's important. And again, if you don't know anything about sales process, just Google what the sales process is in general, because it's very, very helpful. And Chris and I learned this kind of early on in our 20s as outside of private lending, as we got into, before we even owned a business, just on the sales side, because it's important. And a lot of it is obviously, you know, building rapport, you know, creating relationships with somebody, asking for sales and things like that. So typically the process is you know, if I'm making the call, it's, hey, it's Jason at Harmony Bankers. How you doing? You know, typically you have 2 seconds or 3 seconds or 5 seconds to really just let them feel comfortable with you and like you immediately. So obviously you want to be kind of upbeat and do that. Be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about your project, right? So you do less talking. I heard something interesting when I was driving this week. I never heard before, but it was an interesting comment that someone said. I'm surprised I never heard for it. But he said the reason that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth is, you know, you have 2 ways to listen, only 1 way to talk. You know, you should be listening twice as much as talking. And it's a great one. And I can't believe I never really heard that before. But that's what it is. Like I ask a few questions and then I let them talk. People like to talk, right? You get all their information out. And as they're talking, I usually put in some like tidbits here and there of credibility. It's like, oh yeah, you buy in that area? I know that area really well. We used to lend there, or have a house there, or a friend lives here, or whatever the case is. So like I'm going through the whole sales process. It's like 8 different points. And I go through the whole sales process without them even know that they're kind of getting sold at the same time. So it's relationship driven. It's you know, we're building rapport along the way, kind of selling them. It's like, be like, you know, so approximately, you know, what are you buying the property for? Oh yeah, that sounds like a good deal. I'm you know, itching their ego a little bit. Yeah, that's, you know, typically we're lending up to 65% of the LTVs. Typically 80% of the purchase, 100% of the construction. So like they're already like in their head as we're having this regular conversation, because this isn't, when you say a script, like this isn't like I need to ask them 10 questions and need to get the 10 answers. That is not what you do. You'll say, oh, well, I just have, you know, a few questions for you. Like think about it like this. I just have a few questions for you.
Number one,
what is this? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work like that.
It's a conversation. It's a flowing conversation.
One of the best things that, and this doesn't happen often, but like, like they don't vocally say this, but one of the best comments I ever got from somebody was like, hey, like, I appreciate you, talking to me, and you seem nice, but like, how can you? But like you say, you don't need any more information from me. How can you qualify me without pulling my credit or doing these other things? And it's like, it's very simple. I got a lot more information from you than you think I got out of you. You told me what the purchase. You told me what the purchase price was, right? Based off that and the area and the address, I know if you're buying it for a good price, if you're buying it for a bad price. If you're buying it for a good price, that means you're a solid investor. If you're buying it for a bad price, you don't know what you're doing. The construction number you gave me was reasonable. The ARV number was reasonable. You told me you had a few rental properties already leveraged up with banks. That means you have good credit. That means you have experience. In general, you can ask a lot of questions and script around through a friendly conversation. You told me that you own this other business and you did okay, but you do this as a part-time job. Like, I know more about you than you think I know about you just from having a candid conversation. And I think in general, that's where a lot of the best private lenders and hard money lenders win, or in any business, when you can be salesy, you can adjust your risk, you can, and all of a sudden you can determine their character just by having a regular conversation. In general, like, imagine trying to buy anything. Imagine trying to go buy a used car, right? And all of a sudden, this used car, and they probably don't teach this in used car school, and they come up to you and they're like, hey, let's just talk and let's just hang out. Just want to ask you a few questions, and at the end, next thing you know, you're done. The transaction's over. So it's a powerful thing if you do it the right way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after doing this for so long, closing so many deals and just working so many leads, like, you get to the point where you already know who these people are, like a few minutes into the conversation. Like, you already know what they have going on, if they're really doing deals or not. Like, you just get a feel for how it's going to go. And that I know, like, people have said it sounds a little complicated when we say that, and Jason said this over and over, that during these origination conversations, you're being salesy, customer service-ish, and underwriting at the same time. And that makes it sound more complicated than it is. When you agree with that, it's actually not that complicated.
Agreed.
People think like, oh my God, I got to do 2 different things at once. That must be really hard. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, the questions that you're asking are both for the purpose of building rapport, showing credibility, and also throwing in your underwriting. And then also just making everyone's life easy by saying, typically we're going to have X amount of cash to close based on your total job cost, like stuff like that. So that on both sides, like, you can not waste anyone's time and get to the point.
Yeah.
And people appreciate you being direct and competent. And also, to be honest, like, the more qualified the borrower, the more they appreciate that.
That's right.
Some people want to get on the phone and just they just want to talk. Like, they just want to have real estate related conversations. And that's not really what the people that you want to lend to, they got stuff going on. They want to see, they're busy people, they're doing deals, they're making money. And you as well. And they appreciate you being direct and competent and knowing your stuff.
And if you can't do it, you turn it down. Like, there's no need to be like, oh, let me, like, everyone in this business who doesn't have a lot of deals, we call it small pipeline syndrome. They're gonna do whatever they can to make a deal work. And a lot of times deals just don't work. It's just a numbers game. The majority of the deals aren't going to work. So the issues that come up are the ones that, you got one deal here today. If you're looking at one deal a day, that's not enough, right? It's just not enough. You're going to try to figure out any way it's going to work, and you're going to spend way too much time on it. I mean, anyone who's done private consulting with both of us know that you typically have 2 minutes you have a 2-minute call with somebody, and that's it. And if they don't get past the 2 minutes, like, if you got to get off, if they're not going to be a deal, you got to get off the phone with them for 2 minutes. You can't fit, let's structure it like this. Let's structure it like this. Let's structure it like this. You got to move up your question of how much cash do you have to put into this deal as one of the first questions, because if they only have $10,000 to their name, there's nothing you can do. It's just that simple. You're not going to do a deal for them. It doesn't matter. And one of the things that where was I? This is a good point. Oh, one of the things that we were working with one of our partners with in one of our other offices was he was evaluating the deal before he was evaluating the borrower. And what do I mean by that? So, for instance, he was like, yeah, let me look into this deal. Let me see what we can do. And it's like, well, you need to figure out how much cash they have or what they're trying to do. Not like, don't go comp this property if the guy's got 20 grand in their name. It's not enough cash. They're not going to be able to do the deal. It doesn't matter. Because all of a sudden he was like, well, it's not a great area. It's like, well, if you tell him it's not a great area and you don't want to lend in this area, he's going to call you back when he finds a deal in another area, but he's still not going to have enough cash. So you got to kill it. You got to kill it up front.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, don't put the cart before the horse. Don't go underwriting all kinds of different stuff before you get to that important part of it. And yeah, I mean, you don't need to. That's why, part of the HMB system is you get on with these origination leads, you get on the phone as quickly as possible. You can't do it on email, right? Can't do it on email. Yep. Text is not good enough. Like a web app is a fine place to start, but you get on the phone as soon as possible so you can go through your script. Otherwise, you could end up going back and forth to question this and question that and waste the time on something that's not going to be a deal, right?
Yep. Exactly. Let me tell you from experience, because we get maybe 20 web apps a day, and they don't come over. You can't judge a book by its cover. A web app comes over, and it's just like, sometimes it's better if someone just sends you an email with a name and a phone number, because then you don't have nothing to prejudge them. You literally just pick up the phone, call them, and say, "Hey, this is Jason at Harmony Bankers. Thanks for reaching out. I want to see if we can help you out with the purchase of your next project or the refinancing of your next project. Can you just tell me a little bit about your project, and I can let you know what we can do." And then they start talking, and it just goes on. It's a conversation. It's a conversation. You know how many times 50% of the people throughout the day, not 50%, 25% of the people throughout the day will say, "Well, can you just send me a loan application to fill out?" It's like, we don't have a loan application. Well, how do I get approved? It's like, well, everything's is based on the project itself, right? We want to make sure it's a good, viable project. Tell me a little bit about the project. Well, I'm buying at this price, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, typically how much cash do you have? Do you want to put into this deal? Well, I only have 10 grand or 20 grand. Well, it's not enough cash. It doesn't work. We can get paperwork filled out later, right? Like, the reason we don't run all of our stuff through these like sophisticated CRMs or Salesforce or anything else, and we have them for real clients, but we're not just going to load up 100 leads into a CRM that aren't going to go anywhere. People get put into our CRM, obviously, for email follow up, right? Just
for sure. Uh-oh, I think we might have froze up a little bit.
There we go.
Okay, we're back.
Yep.
Yes.
Did I freeze too, or just you? Or did I freeze, or did we both freeze?
I don't know. On my screen, I was not frozen and you were, but like in reality, I don't know.
All right, cool. Well, we're good. Everyone watching live, I apologize. Whoever's listening to this on privatelenderspodcast.com. It was just a small break. No big deal. I don't even remember where we were, but how did I leave off?
So I don't remember exactly where we left off either, but I was thinking earlier when we were talking about frame control in general, just in general communication that you have with your clients, with your barber clients. So now most of the stuff is about origination and sales stuff, which is super important. But it reminded me of a recent story of the interaction I had with a barber who's gotten into a little bit of default. Because this is what, people try to get over on you. And so this guy, we've lent to him a few times. He's a fine real estate investor, maybe not the best in the world, but not a bad one by any means. And he's performed on a few deals. In this particular case, he's gone a little sideways. He's maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 months behind. And that's one of those areas, those gray areas where you make a judgment call if you're going to start legal work or not. If it were a new client, the answer would probably be yes. This guy's been around for a while, and in all likelihood, he can clean up his default. We don't need to start legal work. I just need to talk to him about that. So he was dodging me, as people tend to do when they owe you some payments. It does happen. Not everyone does, but some people do. And he's a salesy guy. He's a sales hustler, and he was giving me all these lines like, they're like, man, I've been trying to reach you guys. I've been trying to get on the phone with you. Like, where you been? I called the office. I've been trying to get a hold of Jason. And I'm like, and that's just all distracting from the point that he owes us money. He's trying to take control of the conversation, of the situation. And after I noticed this was his game after he did it the second time. I've been trying to get a hold of you guys. I mean, we got to talk about this situation. And I was like, Bob, that's what you always say. I've been sitting right here. I didn't miss any calls from you. I'm sitting right here working. If you called me, I'd get it. If you text me, I'll get it, or email. So like, I don't need to hear that game. And on the other side of things, when I'm reaching out to him, he always responds with a text saying, oh, I'm in settlement. So you're not constantly in settlement every time I need to talk, right? So I would mess around with him, and I kind of turned it a little humorous because I wanted to take that control back of the frame, as it's called. And I called him out on it. I'm like, Bob, you always say that shit. You always say that. I'm like, stop messing around. Like, we either gotta, get this back performing, or we're gonna be a default situation. Take that control back. So, granted, that's a different kind of situation, default related. But you see the idea. Like, there's some sharks out there. If you give them an inch, and they'll take a mile. That whole thing. So sometimes you got to snap it back in line. You got to snap it back in line. You are lending them money, lots of it, and you need to control it, and you do make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to you got to reset.
Exactly. And we didn't really discuss this here. But maybe we will in the future. It's a very similar deal when you're raising private capital and you're working with your private capital investors, and you got to make sure you control it. And they might say, oh, well, I'm putting up a good amount of money on this. They might try to steer, give me a point or whatever the case is on the deal. And
right.
You got to be strong. And it's like, listen, you have something, I have something you want. To the borrowers, you have capital. To the private capital investors, you have deals. You have deals for them to deploy capital.
Profitable deals. You have profitable deals, and they need them. So it's the same concept. It's the same concept. I mean, I'd say that the relationships are a bit different with borrowers versus your capital investors, but they're not that different, right? They're not radically different. But yeah, I mean, long story short, just to wrap up on some of that stuff, it all comes down to deal flow. You can have that posture. You can have that confidence when you have deals coming in the door. When you have deals and capital going into them, you're going to have confidence on that end, which, long story short, your marketing game's got to be right. So you don't have small pipeline syndrome. If you do, you're going to be doing what Jason said before. You're going to be trying to make something out of nothing, trying to make deals out of non-deals, and generally just losing the amount of confidence that you should have because you don't have enough lead flow, right? So lead flow is going to lead to your confidence level and the right relationships with your people.
Exactly. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Private Lenders Podcast, and we will speak with you next week. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. Jason, Chris at hardmoneybankers.com. Thanks.